if you're living for their approval, you're not living your life, okay? I'm gonna give you 2 rules and guidelines that you can live by that can help you step out of this trap. Look, life doesn't always give us answers, but it gives us these moments and it gives us these opportunities that we can use to create virtues, tools, and these lighthouses that we can use later on down in life, okay? That's what this channel is all about. So let's get into the 2 rules that can help you to step out of the trap of being controlled by other people's opinions and perceptions. The first rule is taking into consideration what other people think, especially people who mean a lot to you, right? Mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, friends. But, and here's where the rule comes in, you never hold anybody's opinion higher than your own, okay? This is something that's going to take a lot of practice because you're still taking in the input of others, right? Because it's never been about not caring what people think. That's something that I had realized as I got older, especially as I was, coming into my own and right around when I was graduating college, and people have all these different ideas of who are you going to be, where are you going to work, what are you going to do, how are you going to do this, right? I started to realize that you have to care what people think, right? Because if you don't care what people think at all, then that means you don't have any connection to them, right? In some way. At least this is the thoughts that I was thinking about, right? So if you don't care at all what anybody thinks of you in the slightest, right, then you don't really have a strong connection with them. So it's not about not caring what they think, because then you'll be shut down to all different types of helpful criticism or helpful feedback, right? So it's still being able to take in the feedback of others, especially from people who mean a lot to you, okay? And still listening to what they have to say, because there are times that maybe their opinion or their perception on something might actually be correct, right? This is especially true whenever you're in a highly emotional state, that in that case, you're not particularly thinking clearly. And so others people's perceptions, especially those around you who are trying to help you out, are much more clear-headed. And that's when it's important then, okay, what's going on right now in my head, and maybe that the person that I trust is actually thinking more clearly than I am, right? So there are situations where that is applicable. But as far as opinions in general, you still want to take into what they have to say. You still want to listen to what they have to say, but you never hold it higher than your own opinion, right? So you could say, I hear what you're saying, I understand where your opinion's coming from, and I'll take that into consideration. But at the end of the day, your perception of you and your perception of your decision or whatever it is that you're going to do in your life is what truly matters. So you can still take into consideration what they say or their opinion, but you don't hold it higher than your own. And you can say things like, I'm not looking for your approval, I'm just sharing my experience. Or, I'm not looking for your permission, I'm just sharing my thoughts, right? So you could still be respectful of other people while taking in what they have to say, but ultimately what this does is it allows you to still take in feedback, to still take in other people's opinions, especially the ones that you trust the most, but you make sure that your opinion of yourself and your perception of yourself, you can hold that higher over everybody else's, right? So you can do both. And you also want to ask yourself, is this person who's giving me their opinion a credible source? Does this person understand what's going on in my life? And is this person where I want to be? Does this person hold the virtues that I would aspire to have in my life, right? All of that you have to take into consideration when it comes to other people's opinions as well, right? Do I trust this person? Is this somebody who I would aspire to be, right? Is this somebody who I know knows me to some level, right? Those are also things you have to ask yourself, because sometimes if a random person on the street says, oh, that is a horrible coat, or a random person on the street said, how could you do this or do that, right? What do they know, right? They've never met you before in their life, so their opinion is quite literally invalid, right? So that's also something you have to take into consideration when you get different people's opinions and perceptions of you, is you have to look at where those opinions and where those perceptions are coming from, and if they're actually credible and if you can trust them, right? And then the second rule is never let other people's opinions dictate your actions. Okay? And if anything, this is actually more important than the first rule, is not allowing other people's perceptions of you, opinions of you, dictate what you're going to do in your life. So ultimately, it comes down to actions. It comes down to what is it that you're going to do, right? Maybe it's you're trying to pick a job in your life and you have people telling you should do this or you should do that. Maybe you're trying to even something as small as buying clothing, right? You should get this one. This looks better. You should look that one. That one looks better, right? Or what do I look like in this? What do people look like me? What do you think people will think of me if I bought this? Or what will people think of me if I bought this car? Or if I moved into this apartment? Or if I went into that house? Or if I didn't have this pair of shoes, right? All these different opinions is when you have that thought in your head, you can't let that dictate what it is that you're going to do and a decision that you're going to make following that opinion and that perception. You ultimately have to make sure that your opinion, as I said in the first rule, you hold it higher than anybody else's because you know yourself better than anybody else on this earth, okay? And number two is you don't let that opinion dictate your actions. So it's not that you're not caring what people think in your life. It's not that I don't care what they think. I don't care about this, right? I don't care, right? In some cases that might actually be the case, but it's more about taking in feedback, right? Being open-minded, because you still want to be open-minded and hear other people's opinions and hear other people's feedback. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to making a decision and when it comes down to where am I going to formulate a perception of myself or a appropriate perception of this situation, is my opinion comes before everybody else's. My perception of me becomes before anybody else's, right? What I think of myself becomes before what anybody else thinks of me. And what anybody else thinks of me or their perceptions, their opinions are not going to dictate what it is that I do in my life and the decision that I'm going to make. Whether that be the job you're going to choose, whether that be what you're going to buy for what you're going to wear, right? Something you're going to wear, where you're going to live, what you're going to do in your life. It could apply to the smallest decisions all the way up to the big ones, right? And it's going to come with, you got to have self-awareness, right? If you have that self-awareness and you build that self-awareness and you know yourself, then you can trust yourself more than you can trust the opinions of other people, okay? You don't have to shut out their opinion, but you can trust yourself and your intuition alongside of other people's opinions. But at the end of the day, your intuition and the trust that you have in yourself and your own perception comes before anybody else's. And then you make a decision based on that, not on what anyone else says. So keep those two rules in your head. Whenever you're dealing with the thoughts and the voices of other people, you know, I'm not going to hold their opinion and their voices over my own, and I'm not going to let it dictate my actions. You do those two things, you'll get far. All right, over here if you need me, and I'll catch you on the next one, kid. You should do this, you should do that. Why are you picking green? You should have picked blue. And then you're like, okay, maybe I should have, but I gave it some thought, and guess what? I went with what I wanted, and good for me, right? You gotta say, good for me. I'm gonna choose whatever it is that I want and what I think is best. I hear what you're saying, but ultimately, screw blue, I'm going with green.